all of a sudden, these hands cover my eyes and they're gruff and it's kind of like peekaboo. And I'm going, oh, peekaboo. And then I'm like, wait a second, I'm in Amsterdam. There's nobody here that will play peekaboo with me. And I elbowed back and broke the grip. And then there were two sets of hands on me. And they pulled me out of the phone booth and they started beating me. There were three men. And one kicked my right hip through my rib cage, while the other one knocked me to the ground, beating me into my head into the cement. And I sat up and I left my flesh. Once I sat up, I didn't feel any pain. I was not in, my soul was out of the body. I ascended and I went to this place, this most incredible, loving place. It was like, it was very motherly. It was just this very engulfing, lovely, I've often said sticky, like ooey gooey kind of texture feeling. And it was just like pure love. That was the density of love I was experiencing. And I'm like, I'm not really seeing things yet. You know, it's like when I see the image behind you with the Northern Lights and that the etherealness of how they flow. That was the experience that it felt like, only it was like, I didn't have flesh, but I was still feeling it, you know, texturally, if you will. Okay. And then this voice came to me. It was a male voice. And he said, go back in your body. And my response to him was, what, are you effing kidding me? They're beating the crap out of me down there. I don't want to go back in there. Right. And I realized that this divine energy that I was engulfed in isn't human in that moment.
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio-video podcast that features spiritually awakening souls to help inspire you on your own soul journey. And on this episode, my guest is Leigh Grode. Leigh is a sensitive. She's an intuitive, a medium, and channel. And she grew up in Queens, New York. From a young age, Leigh was connected to a higher level of consciousness and an affinity for the spiritual. Despite not having a religious upbringing as a child, she would spend time on her own, standing outside the synagogue walls, yearning to connect with God. Her life journey has been highlighted by many soul walking events. That sounds really interesting. Can't wait to get into that, including her 38 years path of recovery from drug addiction, 30 years of study with Guru Ma Jaya Sati Bhagavati, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, and 2 near-death experiences. Her ability to overcome and connect with higher power has given her a profound ability to teach and guide those willing to live in truth to their highest good. Leigh is a certified channel and core energy life coach, and I love this. Her greatest joy in life is to help others grow, heal, and become the beings they are meant to be. Sounds like you have a lot in common with this channel, because we're trying to help people remember who they really are. Yeah. Leigh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so wonderful to be with you. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much. Now, let's get started. I always ask the same question to everybody on the show, because you're here to share an uplifting spiritual story, and I'd like to know, what kind of spiritual background do you hail from? Did you have spiritual background as well? I guess we said that in the interview. You didn't have a religious upbringing, but you had an affinity to the spiritual. Do you want to talk about that?
I absolutely do. I was raised by my family came from Russia during the pogroms to the United States, surviving before the Holocaust. And then during the Holocaust, other parts of my family were tortured by the Nazis that did remain in Russia. I was raised, my parents don't believe in God, and neither does my brother. But I, on the other hand, have had some bizarre experiences from the beginning of being in my crib and things happening in the crib with my toys movement and without me moving them, and then moving around my crib and going, I'm losing, as a little being, I got a little scared. I tried to crawled out of my crib, and I went running for the front door, and I couldn't really speak at that time. I was too little. I was 2 years old, not even 2 years old. I think I was in 0 to 1 more, because I was just standing up and all that. But I always had these affinities and these weird moments. I mean, my great grandma, okay, let's start. Sorry about that. I started ripping on the inside and I have to slow it down. When I was about 4, 5 years old, we had a summer home upstate New York. And my great grandmother, we called her Bubby, she lived downstairs and my grandparents lived upstairs, and we had this wonderful home in Monroe, New York. And my grandmother said, go get Bubby, it's time for dinner. And I went, down enthusiastically down the stairs and out the door, and I come to the screen door, and it's Friday night, and she was lighting the Sabbath candles, and she had a shroud over her head, and there was no sound coming out of her. But this moment that I witnessed was like pure awe. The way the light from the candles were, the way she was silent and in direct connect. And that was the first moment I had a conscious awareness that there was something much greater that could not be verbally explained, because it was a feeling, a sensation that went through my whole little being. And honest to goodness, I've been chasing that my whole life, ever since that moment, that summer, when I was about 4 years old. Wow. And so that I was never brought through religious school. I went to public school. I grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood in Queens. There were Italians, there were Jews, some Puerto Ricans, but mostly that's what we were. And then I didn't understand that I thought the whole world was Jewish. I didn't get that there was something other than Judaism. And that's the naivete. And I was walking home from school, and my best friend at the time said, what's that? It was Hanukkah time, and there were electric menorahs in the window. I said, you know what that is? You're Jewish. She said, I'm not Jewish. And I stopped and I went, what do you mean you're not Jewish? She goes, I'm not. We're Christians. I said, what's that? And that moment of other was being introduced to my consciousness, which I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't like I had a family that I could sit down and talk about things with and explore the options. I was pretty much on my own. So to fast forward, there's something about, I didn't learn Jewish rituals. The only way in my family we articulated our Judaism for the holidays was by eating food. That was the big thing. Grandma would cook, everybody would come, and we had a very large family at that time, because my grandmother had brothers and sisters, and they all had their own families. And so everybody would have dinner, and then we would meet up at our great grandmother's house in the South Bronx, and we would have what I imagine was shtetl life, like how it was back in Russia. The instruments would come out, the music would start playing, the dancing, the telling of the stories of how they came to America, the whole thing. So to me, it was a cultural experience. I wouldn't understand that there was something called spirituality for a little while, but I had been living it without knowing that's what I was living. And to me, what is spirituality? And spirituality to me is literally our souls, our spirit, expanding and reaching and joining together. And that's the different pathways. There are many paths to the top of the mountain. And so whichever path you're on, as long as it's based in love and kindness, then we will grow to a higher level of consciousness. Whether you want it or you don't, it's happening anyway. So you might as well relax into it and have the experience. So I come from, my immediate family was not such a healthy family. My parents did not learn how to be parents. And there was a lot of fighting and yelling and violence. And I had a younger brother. I still have a younger brother. He didn't get the physical aspect of it. He got the mental aspect of it sometimes with my father. But I got the physical brute, strangled, thrown downstairs, bats cracking my head open, that kind of stuff. Really extreme violence. So I went to drugs, but I didn't know that's why I went to drugs. And I was 9 years old when I started getting high. And I did it for 18 years, and I got clean when I was 27 years old. That's when my spirituality really, it started. I did a little time in Synanon, and that was a very Jewish drug program. I don't know if you know, they always talk all the stuff about Synanon, but they don't talk about its Jewish roots, which is very interesting. And anyway, so I went through that, and that was a horrible experience. And so what happened in this Jewish drug program is I had this issue, and the issue was I was raised to be a heterosexual woman, and I'm not. And but I didn't know what I was. I just knew that, like, I didn't relate to men in that kind of way. They were my friends. I'm not a man hater. I love men. I love all of, I'm not a separatist in any way. It goes against everything I believe in. I don't believe in splitting. I believe in coming together. But I just had this thing where I kept falling in love with all these girls. Didn't do anything about it, but I fell head over heels, like gaga goo goo, to the point of wanting to kill myself because. So drugs were my cushion. And I often think today, with having 38, I'm almost 39 years clean and sober. That'll be next month, July 11th. I really believe that I was self-medicating. I was trying to find a balance, a calming. And I just didn't, the problem with doing that with chemicals is that you don't know what it's going to do to you, and the need to have more and more and more and more. So in that glorious tripping time, I've had many experiences, but then when I was 17, and which is when I had my first near-death experience, I took a half a bottle, like 750 barbiturates with a half a bottle of gin. And I overdosed, and I was in a coma, and I was pronounced dead. And I woke up on the slab in the morgue. Right. I don't go into that more extensively because I don't have a consciousness with that experience. I would say that was more of an unconscious experience. So I get clean in 1985 in San Francisco. I leave New York in 81. I'm on a journey. I'm really into being queer and gay and women love. And, there was like, I remember the first time I tried to understand what death was, because it was really plaguing me around 18, 19 years old, maybe 20. And I went to the Women's Music Festival in Michigan, right? 10,000 naked women in the woods. And I realized that if I was to die right then and there, that I was going to heaven, because man, what kind of world would it be if I was with 10,000 naked women when we died? That right. Seemed like heaven. So that was the beginning of me understanding that where you go in death, loose quotes, is where you are in life, meaning whatever you're achieving. This is before I would get the understandings that I have today, but my initial understanding was that you go where you are, meaning you attract who you are, and you bring that towards you, whether you're aware of it or not. Later, I would learn other lessons. So from there, with getting clean, and then I lived in San Francisco, got clean in 85. In 88, in 86, I went back to school at San Francisco State. I was a film student and a communication student. And I was doing really well in school. And this is a kid who, remember, I got high at 9. And it really affected my ability to learn to read and write. Now, it's not that I'm not an intelligent being, but I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the tools to learn how to accomplish it. And when I went to school at San Francisco State, they tested me and they found out I read like, what was it? It was like 76 words a minute. It was just really bad. It was like an 8th grade, 7th grade level. And for me to be in college, I needed to bring it up above 600. So they put me in remedial classes and I learned to read and write. And I went from reading like 68 words a minute to reading over 900 words a minute. And before I knew it, the second semester, I had straight A's. I was taking all these classes. And then the next semester, it said Dean's List. I was like, Dean's List? What's that? What did I do wrong? And then I didn't realize that the Dean's List meant I was doing exceptionally well. And then the following semester, it was on my transcript, magna cum laude. I was like, what does that mean? So I asked and they told me, and I was like, wow, do you think I could go to school abroad and do my junior year abroad since I'm so smart and I can handle it? Because I didn't know after doing drugs the way I did drugs, if my brain was going to even work. So I went to school. I said I wanted to go to Oxford University because I was a theater director. And I wanted to, if I was going to go back to New York, I wanted to go back like as a director. So I wanted to direct theater in London, and this is grandiosity, and then go back to America with this ability to direct the great stages of London. So long story short, what happened was I had stopped acting out. Like you put down the drugs and you pick up other behaviors, right? And one of the other behaviors was about, sexualizing things. And so I decided to work my recovery in the area of emotional and sexual issues. And so what wound up happening is I went through this period in this program and it said that one of 3 things will happen. You'll either get back with the lover you have, you're going to find a new lover, or something amazing and miracle-esque is about to occur. So I was like, okay. So my ex-lover calls, who I haven't seen in years, and she's in New York, and she says, I'm coming to San Francisco. I think we should get back together. And I was like, whoa, you're good, God. You're really good. Okay. She walks in the door and she's a polluted drunk. I was very early in my recovery. I had 2 years clean and sober, and I had to tell her to go. And I was mad. I was mad. I always had a sense of God. I have always had a sense of God. But I talk to God like a conversation. I've always had that communication like that. And this time I was screaming mad. It was 3:30 in the morning, and I was like, fuck you. Excuse my language. Fuck God, fuck you. What do you, no more ex-lovers, no more bad TV shows. I want a direct message. What is the thing you want me to do? I need a direct message, please. The phone rings. 10:30 in the morning. Hello, is this Leigh Grode? I said, yes, who's this? This is Helen van Sarlos from the Universiteit van Amsterdam. I'm calling to see when you're arriving. I said, arriving? I never even applied to the University of Amsterdam. She said, oh, and being that she's Dutch, she said, oh, does that mean you're not coming? I said, no, it means, and that was my first warnings about the Dutch. And I said, I need to go to my school. Can I get your number? I'll call you back. So I went to my school to see what was going on. And there was no record of anybody sending my application that went to Oxford to Amsterdam. And I was like, okay, this is I asked for a direct message and I got a direct message. Yeah. So I called her back and I said, I'm coming. This is when I'm coming. And I called my parents and I called everybody. And August of 1988, school starts at August 25th or something like that year. And I got to Holland a little earlier than that. And it was the beginning of a lot of situations that I just never knew I would have to deal with. And what wound up happening there was I was a student at the University of Amsterdam and doing coursework. And the thing was, is that every teacher I had, and there's also another part of how the universe works, assigned me these really bizarre papers. I needed to write, my first paper was the origins of anti-Semitism. I'm like, do you know that I'm Jewish? And the professor was from Yugoslavia, and he was speaking in English in a Dutch class. So it was just very bizarre. And so I wrote I had to do research. And it was very painful to read all these accounts and everything. And I really dove into this work about the Second World War. And mind you, let me take a step back for a second. Being queer and living in San Francisco, it was AIDS. And a lot of my friends were dropping dead on the streets. That was also part of the spiritual warming up period, was that all of a sudden these big fellas who were well developed were like skinny bones and literally dropping dead on the street. They would throw them out of the hospital so they can go home to die at home, because they didn't want anybody with AIDS dying at San Francisco General or any other hospital. It was just a hellacious wartime feeling. So it was like, I learned a lot about spirit in this time period. I learned about how to care for the dying in this time period. I was not a separatist like other people were. I took care of them. I couldn't leave someone alone to die alone. That would seem horrible and anti-human. So when I left, part of leaving San Francisco was to get away from the AIDS, the depth of the AIDS and the thickness of the AIDS epidemic. And it was there too, and because I'm still queer, I still go to gay bars or places, and they have these organizations there. Anyway, long story short, as I started doing this research, all this stuff started coming to the surface for me. And I realized that my thesis was a comparative study of AIDS to the Holocaust. How as a society do we survive large numbers of death? The head rabbi for the Netherlands called me personally on my phone and told me that I was a crazy American, stupid child, crazy nut and fruit and nut from California. And how dare I compare AIDS to the Holocaust to anything, especially AIDS. And I was like, excuse me, sir, because I don't have these hierarchical experiences of rabbis, right? So to me, this was a very rude man trying to push his will on me. And I just said, how dare you? You're the rabbi, you're the head rabbi. The day you're going to have to stand before, when you die and you're standing in front of Hashem, that's the religious word for God. When you're standing in front of Hashem, you're going to have to explain this conversation. How dare you withhold precious information? How dare you not help me find the answers to these questions? Who do you think you are? You think you're greater than Hashem? Well, you're not. He wound up hanging up on me. That was that. But I had a fire in my belly. And I really had a problem with organized religion, as you could tell, because I was never oriented with the respectability of these people that are assumed to have positions of hierarchical and sense, and they're writing laws and they're doing all the stuff that's controlling this religion, and they don't have the human decency to help their own people. And I was pissed. We didn't have computers. We would get computers, but we didn't have them. We didn't have cell phones or pagers. We didn't have any of those gizmos yet. And I had to write letters to all these different organizations all across Europe, East Europe, West Europe, UK, all over. And I appealed to their higher good and asked them for help, because this is what I was doing. That summer, the summer of '89, my first summer in Holland, I went on a road trip with my lover at the time, and we went visiting Nazi concentration camps. And I started my work. And for 4.5 years, I interviewed Holocaust survivors. And I asked them about their sex lives in the camps. Like, what was life like? I wanted to get down to the nitty gritty. And they were older, but they weren't as old as they are now.
Mhm.
And there were those who didn't want to speak to me and others that wanted to speak to me. And I started to learn about the inner strength, that God thing, that God spark that we each have.
Mhm.
So I got all this stuff together, and I was invited to study also, not just at the university. I was invited to study at the Netherlands Film and Television Academy in the television department. And I needed to make a film as my dissertation to go back to America with for my degree at San Francisco State. So I was doing coursework for 3 institutions. This is a kid who couldn't even read or write, was now doing coursework for 3 institutions simultaneously. This became my life. Then what happened was one night, it was January 3rd, 1991. And I was in Amsterdam, and I had just left my teacher's house. And I went to call my girlfriend to tell her I was going to be late because I was supposed to meet her at this club to have a cup of coffee, cafe. And all of a sudden, I'm in this phone booth, and I don't know if you've ever been to Holland, but they have these really huge phone booths, wider than the ones in England, and they're green. They were green in those days. Anyway, I'm in there, and I'm calling, and all of a sudden, these hands cover my eyes, and they're gruff, and it's kind of like peekaboo. And I'm going, oh, peekaboo. And then I'm like, wait a second, I'm in Amsterdam. There's nobody here that will play peekaboo with me. And I elbowed back and broke the grip. And then there were 2 sets of hands on me. And they pulled me out of the phone booth, and they started beating me. There were 3 men. And one kicked my right hip through my rib cage, while the other one knocked me to the ground, beating me into my head into the cement. And I sat up, and I left my flesh. Once I sat up, I didn't feel any pain. I was not in, my soul was out of the body. I ascended, and I went to this place, this most incredible, loving place. It was very motherly. It was just this very engulfing, lovely, I've often said sticky, like ooey gooey kind of texture feeling. And it was just like pure love. That was the density of love I was experiencing. And I'm like, I'm not really seeing things yet. It's like when I see the image behind you with the northern lights and that the etherealness of how they flow. That was the experience that it felt like, only it was like I didn't have flesh, but I was still feeling it, texturally, if you will. And then this voice came to me. It was a male voice, and he said, go back in your body. And my response to him was, what, are you effing kidding me? They're beating the crap out of me down there. I don't want to go back in there. And I realized that this divine energy that I was engulfed in isn't human in that moment. And they weren't there to have a conversation with me. They were telling me what to do, take it or leave it, whatever, and there was silence. And that was the other part of this. It was this sticky love, but it was silent. Deafening silence. Deafening stillness. And I don't know how much time, because time doesn't exist out of flesh. What the equivalent of time was, it could have been 2 minutes. I don't know. Could have been an hour. I still don't know. And all of a sudden, I was reapproached, and it said, go back in your body. And I aligned. I didn't even speak. I just aligned with yes. When you all of a sudden, if you're ever in your third eye and you're breathing in, and all of a sudden you go, yes. And then everything's in the oneness, right? Well, I got into the oneness in that moment, and I got sucked back to earth into my body. And my body jumped when I came back in, and they jumped away. they grabbed my attache case, and it had everything I needed for my film, my research information, the text, my checks from my financial aid checks that were keeping me alive, living in Holland, and they took off with it.
Mm.
And I laid on the ground screaming, "Help me," and nobody helped me. Nobody helped me. And I got myself up, and my right leg was dragging because it's all messed up. And I get back to Francis' house, my teacher, and he and his wife are there, and he's like, "Leigh, what happened?" And I told him, and he said, "We got to get you to the hospital, to Zika house, or to the police." I said, I need to find these guys, Franz. I just can't leave. I have to find them. I know I have to find them. And I saw where they were in my mind's eye. And I went, and I walked like Quasimodo, dragging my leg, and I walked down one canal, down to the next, and all of a sudden there was one of the guys jumping on his bicycle, and I went up to him, and I said, "I want my film stuff back." I said, "I see you. I am going to kill you. I'm going to kill you and the other two. Do you understand me? I see you. I know where you live. I want everything returned to me intact. I don't want it in the canal. I want it intact. Do you understand me?" And he freaked out. I said in Dutch, and I said in English, "Ik wil het moorden. I will kill you." And I collapsed right after that. I had to complete that task. And then he brought me to the police. And then the thing that was so bizarre was that the whole attack was recorded on my answering machine, because I was leaving a message for my girlfriend.
Oh.
So she got home and she heard the message, and she went looking for me, and she found me. She took me to the hospital, and then they wrapped me up, but I didn't want to stay. I wanted to get out of there. I didn't want to be around anybody who would touch my body. I just didn't want my body touched. I wouldn't remember this for a long time. This is what, this is 91. I came back to America in 93, and it would be like fall of 93, maybe, or maybe it was 94. I don't remember. But, I didn't know of Oprah Winfrey living in Europe.
Mm.
And she had James Van Praagh on her show.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard him talk. And as he spoke, it was like all the memories came back. I started shaking. I was like I was having a seizure, but I wasn't. And it was just memories and memories. And my girlfriend at the time, was now my wife, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Something is really going on with me, and I don't know what the heck to do, and so I would meet this woman who I was taking care of, a friend of mine who was a straight man who had HIV and AIDS, and he would die of AIDS. And when Richard died, it just brought up something. And friends of mine sent me to see this teacher, Majaya Sati Bhagavati, the one. And he did pretty good with the name, considering you never said it.
Never seen it before.
And she was this incredible person who helped people with HIV and with other things, but that she won my heart when they wheeled this young man under the tent, and he was covered in KS lesions, and he was in this wheelchair, and she got up off her couch where she was teaching from. She walked through 200 people that were on the floor in front of her, and she started kissing this guy and loving him. And I said, "That's my teacher." Because I do that. I get into bed with people. I didn't care about that stuff. I'm not going to catch AIDS, by getting into bed with somebody, as long as we're not having sex. But, it was like, I was like, okay, that began another level of my spiritual journey. And Ma gave me gifts 30 years ago that I have today, that are applicable now that I didn't know I learned then to tell. It's kind of like this unfolding.
Mhm.
So my dad, today is the anniversary of my father's passing, and he died 9 years ago. And when my dad died, he met he, you know, he was really okay with everything.
Okay.
My life changed when dad died, because even though he was like, it was the most confusing relationship in my life, he was the one that comforted me. Even after he beat me, he would comfort me, and it was twisted, and it would take me a lot of unwinding and recovery and therapy to get to this place of, and the awakenings that I began to have more and more frequently and more understanding. And when dad died, everything started a major shift. And then a year later, I was diagnosed with a tumor in my head.
Mhm.
And I was diagnosed in June, and I needed surgery. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go get the surgery. I don't want cancer in my brain, I'll get the surgery. And the doctors were like, they were talking to me like they didn't hear that I said I will get the surgery. And but the surgery wasn't going to be till October. So in that moment, I had to learn. Well, let me reframe that. In that moment, I realized I needed to live in the space of I don't know. And until I knew something was proven tangibly, I didn't know. So that's how I lived. People will tell me, well, you have cancer. I said, I don't know I have cancer. Why are you putting that on me? That's yours. That's not mine. That doesn't belong to me. I don't know. I went for the biopsies. I did everything I needed to do. And I stayed in I don't know as they wheeled me into the operating room. It was a 10.5-hour surgery. And when I came out of it afterwards, I couldn't breathe on my own. I was unable to breathe. And my wife is standing there screaming at me, breathe, Leigh, breathe. And I hand to God, I couldn't breathe. I said, I can't. And so I closed my eyes, and this is how, I have conversations with God. My temple is my car. That's where I scream, where I cry. That's my temple. I don't need to go into a building. I just gotta go be in my car by myself, no other human around. And anyway, so I closed my eyes. I said, okay, if this is my time, fine. I'm okay. Just take me. But if it's not my time, will you help me, please? And as soon as I finished those words, the therapist ran to the oxygen and turned it up to 100. And the first thing out of my mouth was, I'm breathing. They had to wean me off through the night. I've always had this ability to ask for things directly. Like I talked about the wall outside the temple. We weren't members of that temple. That was an Orthodox shul. But I went there religiously to talk to my grandmother because she had just died, and she was my first sense of talking. When I came back from living abroad and being in America, it was very hard to reorient it with being back in the United States. It was very disorienting. And not even because of the near-death experience, but because it was just hard. There's a lot of gluttony here, and I wasn't used to gluttony living in Europe. And so my journey continued right after that. And then what I realized is we own a bakery, and we're pretty famous bakers. I mean, really, no joke. And I couldn't go back to the bakery. And I said to Joan, I can't go back to the bakery. I'm supposed to be doing something completely different. And so that's when my journey began. Really hit like, no more mucking about, no more distractions, no more playing around. And then incrementally it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew to a friend of mine came to this gathering we were having, and she said, I'm not making art, I'm channeling. I said, what do you mean you're channeling? And I said, I want to do that. She goes, well, you'd probably be really good at it. And sure enough, I went and I studied with this woman who taught me how to get out of the way. And all of a sudden, I have this unseen friend. His name is Sebastian. He's got this Irish brogue, and he comes through me, and he's very clear about what's going on. And he's funny in his own way, but he's really to the point and very direct. But I would have it no other way. So I have that. And then I started doing this other work as I expanded and taking more classes and studying and surrounding myself with like-minded souls.
Yeah.
And so I would share my journey, in 12-step meetings, and I would speak at conferences, and I've done all that kind of stuff. And then a friend of mine from this class, from the channeling classes, and I've been doing the channeling classes for a few years now. And she said, I'm becoming a life coach. I said, really? What are you doing to become a life coach? She said, actually, Leigh, the way you put things together, you would be incredible. And so I signed up and invested $13,000 and became a life coach. And so the spirituality part is a daily practice today. I have I say an invitation when I'm about to do anything spiritual. I invite my unseen friends and the discarnates in, and I share and I grow and I write, and I'm working on this book, which is a memoir of my life with lessons at the end of each chapter, how to apply the learning and the teachings. So that's where I am.
Wow, incredible. So you are so now when you say you invite the discarnates in, is there any danger to that, or is that because you're in this high vibrational frequency of unconditional love, so you're only going to be a vibrational match to the positive discarnates?
Well,
I just want to make that clear. Let's see
okay,
if that.
yeah, I have Sebastian is my gatekeeper and won't let any preparatory type of beings in. My teacher thinks it's okay. I don't. I dealt with abuse a lot and I've healed it. And that's what I really would love to talk about a little if I could.
Sure, sure.
Which is, and it goes with the discarnates too. But what I learned, what I got in touch with, what I became heightenedly aware of, which many, I'm sure, of your listeners understand some of this, I'm sure, that we choose what lessons we're going to learn in a lifetime, that we pick our parents, we do all this stuff, right? I had spent so many years of my life being a reaction to what happened to me as a child until I got to a place where I was able to change the ending of the story. And
Cool.
That's what I teach. I teach people how to change the end of the story. Why? Because we're human, but we're not human only. We're soul, and we are embodied in a carbon envelope for sure, and that we can do things with this carbon envelope. And part of it is to learn that what we chose to experience in this lifetime was to expand our souls of understanding. The idea of, I have friends who talk only in shadow and light terms, but there is a lot of darkness and there is a lot of brightness, and one can only exist in complement to the other. So the ideology of punishment has to be relieved, and it has to be shifted in a consciousness to be able to say, this is a teaching, this is a learning. What is my soul lesson here? What do I understand? And what do I need to understand? So in the process of doing this, I was able to heal with my father and with my mother. Now, my mother and my relationship was the worst relationship in my life. I tried to kill myself over my relationship with my mother. I can't tell you how many times, how tortured my teenage years were. But the truth of the matter is, what I learned as survival skills were keys in doorways to unlock different roads and different maps. They weren't the end result. If you only want to be the child of somebody who abused you, then you will be that. And you will not transcend that because you keep choosing it.
Right.
So the question is, what is one's soul lesson? What are you here to do? Are you here to bring the light? Are you here to help balance out what's going on? I hope so. I feel like for me, I've been given the opportunity to experience my soul. When I had my NDA and I transcended and I felt that icky, gooey love. So it was like, that's not out there or up there, that's right here. So it's like in religion, they talk about the God spark. I'm not anti-religion. I'm anti-dogma. Religion, if the Christians, God bless anybody who's a Christian, but if you would really listen to what Jesus said, as opposed to what his disciples wrote, you would be a happier person. Trust me. Who did he hang out with? He hung out with people like me and you. He wasn't like, yeah,
Right.
us.
But he was criticized by the religious leaders.
Oh, right. The Jewish people. And when I say that Jesus was a rabbi, people say, no, he wasn't. I say, yeah, he was. And they tried to throw him out. He was a carpenter. He said, yeah, on some level, but he was a carpenter, not of wood, of your soul.
Interesting.
And, yeah.
Interesting take. Interesting take on it. I like that, what you said, a carpenter of the soul.
Yeah, of the
I like
soul.
what you said.
Yeah.
Would you say this dogma is where this idea of punishment comes from? Because I also think that punishment doesn't really satisfy or doesn't really help a person change. But what, like you said, lessons
Right.
where people learn something, that
Right.
makes a lot more sense than punishment, because punishment doesn't achieve any good end.
No, because negativity attaches to negativity. Positivity attaches to positivity. You
Right.
want somebody to become a better person, keep talking to them as they are that better person. And they can expand to try it on like a new suit. You know, you are a better person. You have to make the decision to shift your focus. And it's the
Yes.
same thing. Yes, was I an abused kid? Yeah, I was abused. Okay. All right, but you know what? I'm intact. They didn't break me.
Right.
I chose to not go splinter off into different things. Now, not everybody has that choice, and some people are part of a karmic relationship, and someone has to splinter off for another person. I don't know that. That's not my story. That's the story of somebody else. Oh, you know, people put down people with illnesses like autism. An autistic person vibrates at a higher frequency than the average human being. That's a different kind of being. Why do you have to judge whether it's better or worse? It's different.
Different, yeah.
Accept it. Be curious about it.
Yeah, that's great. Have you heard teachings that I like to follow are also channel teachings called the Abraham Hicks. Are you familiar with those teachings?
I am.
Do those resonate? Those really resonate for me because they talk about, instead of judging rightness and wrongness, there is no right or wrong. We came here for the diversity.
Right.
And there's this multiplicity of spirit that reveals itself through different sexual identities, for example. Why do we make these right or wrong? It's diversity. It's a beautiful thing. So some people express their sexuality one way, and some people homosexuality, or some people heterosexuality, but they're both beautiful because they are both aspects of the divine.
Absolutely. And the truth of the matter is, look, I tried to be straight. I really did. I tried. I had more
That didn't
boyfriends.
work.
It didn't. And it's not like, it's not like I had terrible sex or whatever it was. It was that I didn't fit into that role at this time in history. I
Sure.
didn't. And that like my teacher once said to me, she said, Leah, you are not a lesbian. And I said, I know I'm not a lesbian. And everybody in the room stopped and turned and said, how could you say that? I said, what do you mean? I'm not looking to suffer. I found my soulmate who happens to be another woman. Okay, so I'm in love with a woman who is my soulmate, who we share things and create magic together. And we created a home, and we took in a child, and we adopted this child, and this child was born to a crack addicted mother. And now we she said to me, she tried to be gay, Cassandra, our daughter, and I said, you're not gay, honey. But I didn't mind you being bisexual because you didn't get pregnant, and we were breaking the cycle of your family. So when she met the man who was her partner in Home Depot, I said, I'm happy, finally. And she looked at me, I said, I told you you weren't gay. I'm not supposed to tell you things, but I know these things.
Right.
And so now we're grandmothers of these two incredible children, these girls, they're science, and they are on a different frequency. Now, my daughter's a Christian, her husband's a Christian. I hope they get over this this phase of their life, because it's so hard to keep my mouth shut, but I do, out of respect, because I made a commitment. And but it's so totally, so when they come here to stay with us, they try to rationalize why we sleep in the same bed. And they try to say that I'm a boy. And I said, honey, I used to have short hair. And so I cut all my hair off many years ago. And then when they came into my life, I let my hair, well, COVID helped me grow my hair out. So I'm like, I said, no boy has boobs like your grandmother. And they go, oh, grandma. And then so, we try to teach them with love.
Yeah, I like how you, even though they're going through this, well, to you it may be a phase like this, they'd be getting more religious, it sounds like, but you totally respect that that's where their life journey is at this point. I think that's the testament to you, that you recognize all these different points of view, even though for you, you're on your journey. It's like you're respecting, although it must be difficult, right? But
It is. It's very difficult. I mean, but it's
yeah,
like that becomes political, and I don't want to go into it,
yeah.
especially with them. And then her husband gets a hair up his behind, and he wants to debate me. And I'm like, why are you debating me? She said, why are you doing that? I said, is that loving?
It
Well,
sounds like it's pushing against. Sorry, it's like Abraham Hicks talks about stop pushing against things, and debating would be pushing against, because whatever you push against increases.
right,
So you
exactly.
might as well just let him have his opinion, and you have your opinion, and
That's
just
why right. It's like, don't feed it. Don't feed it. Just
no.
be,
I don't debate anybody. I don't debate anybody, because to me, they're right and I'm right. They're right. Their subjective opinion is right for their world, and my subjective opinion is right for my world. And like Abraham Hicks says, all opinions are valid for. It's just when we start trying to impose
right,
our own opinions onto other people, that's where the problem
right.
comes. And that's what a
Well,
debate is. It's imposing.
well, it's ego is what it is.
Right.
And that is the
Right.
downfall of any spiritual journey. Because once one
I find
gets, allows the ego to take over, you're not moving forward. You're not moving. You're stuck. And like Abraham Hicks is a beautiful teacher, because there are many masters that teach pathways. And as long as the pathway is doused in love and kindness, it's a great pathway.
Mhm.
The bottom line, like one of the experiences I had that I didn't share with you was I experienced Jesus Christ. He
Oh,
came
okay.
to me when I was in that drug program, and they tried to destroy me for being gay. And it was a horrible experience. It was documented for Congress as an example of violation of civil liberties. And they in Judaism, when someone dies, you sit shiva for them, and for a week. And they wanted me to take a doll and bury it, and it be the lesbian part of myself. And then they wanted me to beg and scream for forgiveness, and they wanted me to sit hand to God. Yeah.
That's crazy. So, and you said this was documented by Congress as a violation of your civil
liberties for gay and lesbian. Yeah.
Right.
Coalition. Yeah, they came and interviewed me. That's how I found out I was lesbian. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that's what I was. But that was back in the 70s, a long time ago. But but the point, I just went blank. Oh. So I'm in this room by myself, reading the Bible, and this light appears behind me and comes up to me, and it's Christ. And I looked at him, and his arms were extended like to receive me. And I thought I lost my mind. And I ran out the door, and I ran down the stairs, and I ran out of the building. And I went to one of my dearest friend's house, who was a born-again Christian. And I said, Paul, I need a Bible, and I need to go to your church. And he said, what's going on? I said, I can't even tell you. Please do this for me. So we went the next night to his church. They were having church, and he got me a Bible. And this woman goes into tongues. I'm Jewish. I don't know if it's tongues. Okay. She starts speaking in this other language. And then this other woman goes, I'll testify. And she was going to say everything that the woman just said in this foreign language. Well, she's talking about me. She described exactly what happened to me in that room with Jesus Christ. I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here now, because it was the energy was so overwhelming. And I felt so betrayed by the people in this program that were supposed to help me with my mental health. And I was betrayed. So that was a spiritual experience in a religious environment, but it wasn't controlled. Like this woman organically had this experience, and then this other woman organically had this other experience. It happened to say what my experience was that I couldn't even put words to. The love, the energy I felt that night in that room, I felt when I had my NDE. When I transcended, it was the same light. It was the same love. It was the same. It was the divine love of God, a non-human love that makes up every cell of everything that exists. So when people talk about the God spark and that it's in the heart, and so that's where the soul is in the heart. The soul is, a spark of it is in the heart. That's why we're alive. We have that in our heart. It makes our heart beat, right? It's not just a smack on the butt when you come out. It's that God spark. Then we have this flesh, and this flesh is housed in our soul. It's not the soul inside the flesh. It's the flesh and then the soul. And this soul of ours is all one.
So do you think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you about the experience in the church. So when this woman was speaking in tongues, so even though this was a very probably dogmatic type of church, but are you saying that the energy was divine love there, so God can go through any,
right?
Like that divine love is present even in some of these dogmatic churches. It's just hijacked by some of the personal identities that go on in the church.
It's about the egos of the humans. Yeah.
So when the ego gets mixed in, Now, I
Tough.
want to make a distinction with ego. So I think Abraham Hicks' teachings. So a lot of spiritual teachers, and I kind of went down this path for a while, and it was kind of detrimental, this killing of the ego and banning the ego, burning. And it's like, no, what about embracing the ego, integrating the ego? And there's a healthy aspect to the ego and an unhealthy aspect, right? Right.
Exactly.
So you're
And
talking about the
yeah,
unhealthy
no,
aspect in that.
it's when we're out of, when we're focused on control,
Controlling, and it's coming from an unloving place,
right? With no
that
kindness,
aspect.
right?
Right. So I like what you said. You said all paths lead to God as long as it's doused, you said doused in kindness and love. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you for that.
And
That's a
so,
nice way.
and in church, you can do that. It's when people start telling you, when God bless him, I love him to pieces, but when he starts, if it's written in the book, therefore it exists. I'm like, huh,
Mm.
okay, I think that's your belief system. And he says
Yeah.
it with such fervor that that's
Yes.
pure control. Like, what if it
Yeah.
wasn't? What if it wasn't?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you I've been studying the original scriptures like before they were translated into Latin and English, and trust me, they ain't. What they're teaching in the church today is a complete misinterpret. It's not only a misinterpretation, it's a transliteration. So it's kind of like if you look at the French word "oui" is OUI.
Right.
So a transliteration of that would be WE.
Uh-huh.
That's not WE, it's OUI, but it's got that sound we, so people are misinterpreting that. And I think that's what happened with the biblical scriptures. If you look at the original scriptures, they were written in something called pictographs. They weren't written in alphabet, Hebrew pictograph, and then later the Greek pictograph.
What about
And
Aramaic? Was it written in Aramaic?
Hebrew, I think the very original was Hebrew and Greek. I think the Aramaic, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that
I don't
came
know. That's a
later.
real question.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure about that. But what I've been studying is the original Hebrew
Yeah.
and the original Greek. And every single verse in the Bible says the same thing. So you can't make this up. There's the two love covenants. The first love covenant is between a man and a woman, which gives birth to the child. The second love covenant is between God and man, or of course, a woman, to be politically correct. Everybody, right? God and people. And that is the idea of the seed, which is planted in the brain, which creates your own reality with your thoughts, which is the Abraham Hicks stuff, that you create your own reality with the seed of the thought that's placed in the brain. So God gives us a, so if you look at the Bible, even the Ten Commandments, they don't say thou shalt not this or that. It's the love covenants. Every
Right.
single one is exactly the same thing.
Right.
When you see the pictograph for the ox, it's the strength of God within man
Wow.
that gives birth. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's all good news, but it's been changed. First of all, when they changed it into Latin, it lost all of its meaning, and then they changed it into English. And it's not necessarily nefarious at that point. It's just you can't carry the meaning over when you translate pictographs. It's impossible basically to translate a pictograph into an alphabet. It doesn't work very good.
That's right.
So it loses all the meaning. So then you have these people like Constantine that came in and they threw certain books out and they kept certain books and they decided this is how we're going to control and dominate people.
That's exactly it.
We're going to tell people what they can and cannot do.
Exactly.
But no, wait a second. When you're living in alignment with your higher self, you will do the highest good of all. It's not a matter of, but they tell you, oh, don't listen to your heart, because out of the heart proceedeth the wickedness, so they basically inverted all the stuff. Like it's all been inverted, inverted, inverted. And when you invert stuff, you get a mess. But then people say the Bible says it and that settles it. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. If that's what you believe, that's
Right. That
okay.
there's no wiggle room. There's nothing
No,
there.
and
I
you're not
love
allowed to question it.
I love what you're saying. And this is so important. It's like I want to get a copy of I want to see those drawings. I want to see those symbols, you know?
Oh, okay. Check out the YouTube channel. I'll send you the link. Mike Popovich. He doesn't like to call himself a pastor. He's not religious, but what he does is he's called Heal the Book, Heal Your Book. And he does this for Christians, and doesn't matter if you're a Christian, he does it for everybody, but he actually goes into these pictographs and then explains the meaning. It's called Freedom Ministries.
Oh, I
That's the
love
name of
that.
the YouTube channel, I think. Yeah, check that out.
Please,
It's
please,
really helped
you
me.
send me the link.
I will send you the link. Yeah.
Thank
In fact, I've interviewed people on this podcast before whose lives have been completely changed because they were so deep into the religion, and then they got freedom. That's why it's called Freedom Ministries.
you. Right.
And it's interesting because even the thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. Well, that creates a cognitive dissonance in the
Right.
brain. If you tell someone, don't think of a pink elephant, what do?
Right. They think of the
They think
pink.
of it. So then, do you really believe that God, who is
Right.
the source of
Right.
life, would
Everything.
tell people, don't do this, don't do that, because he's basically telling people to go and do it?
Right.
Like whatever. It all falls apart when you
Right. It's an
when you bring the critical mind into it. Then the whole house of cards comes down. But they tell you, don't question.
right.
Now we know why.
Well,
Because
that's
as
what.
soon as you start questioning, it all collapses.
And that's kind of like what I want for my children. I want them to be in the reality and the truth. You talk about divine truth. It's not
Hmm.
about an opinion, it's about divine truth.
Yes.
And that is most important. And that's why
Yeah.
when it's organic, when it has life, when it has breath,
Mhm.
we get to, every human on this planet has that piece of us that says yes, and that piece that says no.
Yes, exactly. And everything I just said about the misinterpretation and the people are religious and now they found freedom, I want to also say that I have complete love and respect for all the hardcore
Yeah,
born
me too.
again Christians out there, or all the hardcore religious people, because you're on your journey and I
Yep,
respect it. I'm
exactly.
simply sharing
What you,
what my experience has been, but do with it what you want. I only have love towards all, even the most deeply religious. I do.
yeah, yeah,
Because you have to, because they're all part of the one. We're all part of one.
exactly. And that's like not to be political, but people will like, I was asked, do you love Donald Trump? I said, yes, I love Donald Trump. He's a child of God. They said, how could
Everyone
you
is.
love him? I said, I have to love him. We're the same.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, can you look me in the eye and say you've never done anything dastardly? For God's sake,
Absolutely not.
you know? So I said, so he's getting caught with it and he's doing it out loud and proud. And for you to want the light, he's doing you a great service. Do you see that? How can you not love him for doing that service? Now he may
Yeah.
not see it like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
who
don't think
knows?
consciously he's above his individual wanting his own greedy stuff. Whatever. So
Yeah.
what? That's his journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate what you're saying because yeah, we have to have love for everyone. And the people that we may not agree with what they do, but they do provide a catalyst for our
They
own
do.
spiritual growth.
Yes,
They
it's a,
teach us how to love unconditionally.
exactly.
And that's,
Exactly.
you
And
know,
that's what we're here for.
yes, that's a beautiful thing. I interview so many people with near-death experiences, and they all say the same thing, where the purpose of life is to love, to learn how to love in this 3D realm, which is it's challenging, but like you said, when we can get out of our own way,
Right.
then anything is possible. We're unlimited beings. It's a beautiful thing.
Right. So
So yeah, go ahead.
if we just switch the word from ego to control,
Okay, that makes sense.
you know
That
what I'm
makes
saying?
sense. Yeah, because I hate
Ego is a sense of
making the
self.
ego a bad thing and all this. Yeah, because I feel there's so many spiritual teachings right now that we need to kill the ego and the mind is bad and the body is bad and no, they're all part of the one. But it's what we do with it exactly in the integration. So did you want to, I've really enjoyed having you, and I want to know before we go,
Sure.
how can people reach you? Did you want to give how can people contact? Are you open to people contacting you?
Yes, absolutely.
What's the best way?
I go through my website. It's www.leighgrode.com. It's my name,
Okay.
lowercase.com. And just yeah, I'll talk to my friend who helps me with my website, and ask him to make sure that that's operational. And I'm on Facebook if you want to reach me. I put out different things every day, and you'll see if you check my website out, you'll see when I launch my own podcast, because I'm being called to do that, and not as,
Nice.
not in a controlling way, but in a sharing way, that we need
Sure.
to really find each other now. This is a time of finding each other
Mm,
and and working together with people, because we can't do this in a vacuum. This
mm,
is not a time for isolation. I mean, we might isolate. We were shut down. We learned to isolate. So it's not punishing. Please come out of punishing mentality, and
mm,
just be in. If you can't do anything, that's okay. Just sit and be and breathe, and
mm,
let your essence come out. Just let it come out. Just be grounded in the here and the now. And if there's anything I can do, I do have one-on-one still. I do groups, and
mhm,
uh, it's all about healing. It's all about, for me, the path is that of a reintegration. We don't sever parts of ourselves like body parts or anything, but
mm,
what we do is we take it from the focus of our front of our mind in our day-to-day experience, and we let it assimilate into the rest of us. For me personally, I visualize this wall of clear boxes, and I put all the different life experiences so I could see them and I can access them if I need them, but that they're out of the front of my mind. And if we can work to relieve the busyness of the mind and experience a little more quiet, I promise if one can do that, you will be able to hear even more, because it's only in the quiet that you can hear it. There's no competition.
fantastic. So if there's one last thing that you'd like to share with the world, what would it be, Leigh?
We need each other. I need you. I can't do this alone.
Mhm,
And who would want to? It's not a them against us. That's an illusion.
mhm.
But find the we, find the you and the me together. But do it. Do it.
Great. I love it. Do it.
Yeah.
Let's just do it. Remember that commercial on TV in the 80s? Just do it. I don't know if that applies, but in this
But
case, I
hey,
think it does.
if it
Yeah.
isn't broken, don't fix it.
Well, exactly. Well, Leigh, I appreciate your message of unity and I appreciate everything you do. You're a great light in the world. Keep on doing what you're doing. And I appreciate you. And thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you. This is
All
wonderful.
right.
You
All
keep doing
right.
what you're doing too.
Oh, thank you. I will. It's my passion.
I
I
understand.
have to do it. Oh,
Understand.
thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you next time on the Soul Inspire podcast. The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness.